Here, the first flight of City Council at-large candidates. They will be asked 3 questions requiring a 50-second response each, then 2 yes or no questions, and then finally a 60-second wrap-up. So let me introduce the candidates that we have, and then we'll go right to it. First up, we have Tony Exum. In the number 2 seat, Douglas Bruce. Did I say that right? Third, Brandy Williams. Sean Paige. Bill Murray. Tony Carpenter. And Val Snider. So let's get right to it here. First question, we'll start with Mr. Exum.
There's 2 people that didn't show up. There's 14 candidates here tonight.
Are we okay now? Very good. First question for Mr. Exum. Do you believe that infill development and greenfield development require 2 separate land use review processes?
No, I don't. I think those processes should be similar. It should be the same. Any type of development that you're doing in the city, the zoning requirements should be enforced, and I don't think the processes should be different, whether it's infield or greenfield. So those processes should be the same. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bruce.
I agree with Tony. They should be consolidated. One of the things that business people complain about with city government is the regulation, the red tape, the delay, the costs, including fees. And we can simplify those costs by having one process and having it go through one process for everybody. That would make it more attractive. Particularly, we should give a preference to infill development rather than having sprawl in Colorado Springs. We don't need to spread out towards Kansas. The reform team, of which I'm proud to be a member, is against mindless sprawl. It'd be much better to have a more compact city, which would reduce police and fire response times, among other things. Thank you.
Brandy Williams.
First of all, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a busy Thursday evening, I'm sure, in your schedules, and I'm glad to see you all here, realizing how important it is to get the right people elected to our city council. For those of you who don't know me, I am a civil engineer, and I have gone through the process both in infill and in greenfield development, and I think that we definitely need the same process for both of those to make it much easier, so that as an engineer, I don't have to look at both of the developments coming in front of me and say, this one needs this set of requirements and this one needs this set. The whole job here is to get businesses established faster, to get people employed sooner, and the faster that we can do that is by streamlining that process and making them similar all the way through. Thank you.
Sean Paige.
Thank you very much. I agree. We have to have streamlined processes, not just in how we permit for building in greenfields or infill, but across the city. So I agree with Doug and Brandy on that. I also just want to say I want to thank Owen for having this event tonight. It's been an honor to serve this district. I was appointed here, but I took it very seriously, and it was really a pleasure to be able to serve you folks here in the 3rd District. I'm running at large now because I thought there were a couple really good candidates for you to choose from. But going back to the issue of permitting, in general, we tend to think that we're a good business-friendly city, but when you talk to business people in the city, what you find out is we're not. We've become complacent about our business climate, and we need to do everything possible. And that starts with just clearing away every possible hurdle and making sure that the city is as business-friendly as it can be.
Bill Murray.
I'm Bill Murray. I'm going to take a slightly different tact. Yes, things should be easier. However, we're educated enough that we know that there's a difference between the 2 environments. The question that comes before us is Copper Ridge an infill development? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you combine the 2, you run that risk. And I want you to remember what you asked for, okay? You're asking for us to represent you to make the hard decisions. And the hard decisions require due diligence, they require research. And we should be able to take these two environments, separate them, make them just as easy, but unique and different to represent the communities that we're trying to support. Thank you.
Tony Carpenter.
I want to thank you all for showing up. You've probably seen me run a few times. We've got the city government to where we need to simplify. We need to do the things that we need to do for you and businesses to get the jobs back in the city. Yes, we need to combine. And there's no sense in having 14 different processes to accomplish the same goal. That's half the problem we've got in this city. We've got 14 people standing around watching one person work. This is the same process. We don't need but one process to get the job done. We need to simplify, make our government work for you.
Val Snider.
I'm going to take a different spin on two fronts of the cost of infrastructure for an infill versus cost from the greenfield. To do an infill project on an old building, it costs a lot more to redo things like the electricity and the plumbing. If you have a cow pasture in the greenfield, it's a completely different process to get the infrastructure out there, and that costs a developer a lot more. But probably the biggest reason that there ought to be a change between the greenfield and the infill is the public input process. When you have infill, you have a lot more people around to get public input. When you have greenfield, sometimes there's nobody. You need to make sure you get plenty of public input when you do an infill process.
All right. Val? We'll begin the next round of questions.
Have everybody mute their cell phones.
Oh, yes. Please, if you would, set your cell phones to vibrate or silence. Thank you very much. We'll begin the next round of questions with Mr. Bruce. And the question is, should vacation home rental properties use the same process that is required for bed and breakfast to become established?
That's the Sally Clark memorial question. I don't know if there are any particular burdens, Commissioner Clark could tell us that, on being a bed and breakfast compared to other commercial establishments, but it sounds like somebody feels that vacation homes are under-regulated. I don't particularly like that concept that we need more regulation, or if we're regulating one business, we should automatically regulate a second business, or every business that is some degree of comparison to that business. If somebody wants to rent out his home for a month or do a vacation swap with friends or relatives or somebody in some kind of a group in another state or another country, why do we need to regulate that? If somebody wants to have his home, why is the city saying you got to get permission from us to let somebody stay in your house? I don't like that concept.
Brandy Williams.
Well, I sat down and talked with one of the local owners of a bed and breakfast here in the neighborhood, and it is a vast concern with local businesses because they see that there's just as much money coming in from a person with vacation home rentals as there is with their bed and breakfast, but they are being unfairly looked at, as in one is paying a tax rate that's residential and one is paying a tax rate that is commercial, and according to the state of Colorado at this moment, there is a vast difference between the two of those. So what I would do in that process is continue to sit down with people in the area and get your opinion and your feedback on what the community feels that this is being a hindrance on their neighborhood and the impact that it's having to further understand your view of where this particular issue should go. Thank you.
Sean Paige.
I sometimes think one of the biggest problems for a legislator is we're always looking for problems that don't exist. We're just trying to create new problems. I don't see this as a major problem. I understand for bed and breakfast owners and owners of established lodges, this represents competition. I happen to think competition is good. On a case-by-case basis, where property owners are abusing this privilege and where it is a true problem, too many cars, I think we need to just deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I've strongly believe in property rights. I'll side with property owners on this one. I think competition is good for the bed and breakfasts too. Bring down their price, make it more affordable, so on and so forth. So I'm not looking to go out and regulate. When I make a decision on city council, I say, one, is this really a problem? That's the first thing. Two, is this really the right solution? Three, can we afford it? And does it respect people's rights? I think in this case, I don't see a major problem at this point, so I would say, no, unless it's proven to be a problem, I wouldn't say we should go ahead and regulate that at all.
Bill Murray.
As usual, I'll stand up in front of you as your representative and argue 2 points, and that's equity and fairness. And that's what we need to look at. How, in fact, do we use the laws to provide both equity and fairness to you as citizens? Now, if these people are using these particular residences as bed and breakfasts without paying their fair tax, then we need to look at the equity and fairness issue. Either we should not tax them and not tax the B&Bs, or come up with some compromise solution. First order of process, how big is the problem? The second order of process is making sure that you're both equitable and fair with the entire process. Thank you.
Tony Carpenter.
Well, I want to see a lot of taxes that businesses pay in this city eliminated. To do that, we've got to find the funds. I believe they're there. I would say if we're going to regulate, we need to regulate everybody equally. But personally, I want to get rid of a lot of these regulations, a lot of the business taxes, and if we can do this, we can turn this community around.
Val Snider.
Hard to find something different after all that. But I believe that there should be some consistency. If the two services are similar, that they ought to be taxed about the same. So I would say we got to be consistent between these two establishments if they provide the same kind of service.
We'll start the next question with Brandy Williams. Oh, I'm sorry, you haven't gone yet.
It's okay.
Tony Exum.
I think everybody's made some excellent points. My stance on it would be the consistency and the fairness in it. I think if it looks like, it acts like, and sounds like a bed and breakfast, then that process should be consistent throughout. Thank you.
Now then, let's start with Brandy Williams. And for the rest of the panelists, the question will be, has the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority been successful, and should it be extended?
Yes, the Pikes Peak Rural Transit Authority has been successful and it should be extended. At this point, sadly, the lifeblood of this community as far as road construction projects are concerned is the PPRTA. It is where we get the Union and Austin Bluffs interchanges done. It is where we get Milton Proby Parkway paid for. It is a piece of where Academy and Woodman are getting constructed and completed. And it is vital to keeping infrastructure up in this city and keeping our traffic flowing and our people moving throughout this area. And I do advocate supporting it and continuing it in the future. Thank you.
Sean Paige.
I do as well. We can all quibble about the mix of where the funds go, road, transit, and so on and so forth. So I think that will be the debate. Yes, obviously, good, sound infrastructure is critical to the city, critical to bringing jobs here, critical to everything. So yes, I think it's emblematic of the way we do things in Colorado Springs, which I think is great. We have to go and we have to ask the taxpayers, and we have to detail what we're going to use the money for, and we have a sunset provision, so at some point we have to come back and ask, and I think that's great. I would just point out one thing of the PPRTA. The R in RTA stands for rural. There's been a lot of talk about Copper Ridge and whether it was inappropriate to use a so-called urban redevelopment tool for possible development in Copper Ridge. But the truth is, we're using a rural redevelopment tool for our highways, and PPRTA was designed to service rural areas, and we're using it to run transit in our city. So you use the tools that are available to you, you use them creatively to get the job done.